Good morning, Dr. Gould. It's Jack Kelnhofer. Welcome to my EDUC 800 Day in the Life presentation. I want to thank you for allowing us to do social media for this first week because, as you know, there's going to be a great deal of writing, and so it's nice to have had a chance to do something other than writing. So here's my Day in the Life presentation. My first of my assumptions about leadership is that an effective leader is one that allows people to determine their own path to success. And I believe this because it's been taught to me in both an MBA program and a Master's in Education program. But I've also believed it because I see it work. I'm currently the dean of our e-learning program at Ocean County College. And when I started, a great deal of people, faculty members, would write me and ask me, what should I do about this position? What should I do about this student? And these things. And the most effective answer I could always say is, well, what do you think you should do? What do you want to do? What matches your pedagogy? What matches your educational philosophy? Because that way they're empowered. And for me, one of my philosophies as a leader, as a dean, is that I want to have an array of different teaching styles available so that as students go through our program, they're meeting different personalities. If they meet the same teacher with the same ideas every class, it's not as valuable for them as if they meet a teacher who is very strict on the rules and then a teacher who allows the rules to lapse a little bit. And so, yeah, for my end, it ends up being not as consistent as I would like, but for the students, it gives them a chance to see all the different personalities that they'll meet in the work world. As you can see in my discussion here, micromanagement is one of those words that I identify as a bad word. It's not really like bureaucracy. It's supposed to be a good word, but micromanagement is, it's just the kiss of death in my opinion. When you look into every aspect of what a skilled person is supposed to be doing in their job and try to adjust every small thing that they do, why did you hire someone with skill in the first place? Someone who's trained themselves. And this is a conclusion that the person who works with you or the person who is your student comes up with on their own. If a student says, hey, I'm a much better note taker if I use an audio recording device, who am I to say, no, you can't do that? So my first assumption is you let a person who is you're leading, let a person who you're leading determine how best to achieve the goals you want them to achieve, because they know themselves better than anybody else. All right, moving on to assumption number 2. Leadership is most often bestowed upon or awarded to the most charismatic rather than the most qualified. I fully recognize that that statement there is more negative than I would like it to be. This is not something that I, as a leadership assumption, that I like that I have. And I would love to get out of it, but it's been my experience in the working world that many times at the highest level of leadership, the people who are not there because of their skill base. They're there because people like talking to them, that people have great interpersonal intelligence and can talk and charm people and do very well in that area. But sometimes these are people who don't have the actual knowledge or skills are required to lead. You know, it's like that student in the classroom who's quiet but taking in everything you hear, everything you say, and then gives you a great answer but has never spoken. So it's an interesting and good way to go about looking at when you're recruiting leaders. A way to recruit leaders is to look for the whole spectrum of a person. Look at all the 8 or 9 intelligences. I don't know what Gardner's up to as abstraction and intelligence. I don't know. So if it's the 8 intelligences, look at everybody and look at all of the things that they have. And this is a point I bring up on every search committee that I'm in. I've been on a lot of search committees hiring full-time faculty. I've been on 3 dean searches myself. And I've interviewed for a deanship a couple of times. And one of the things I always like to talk about is we've got to look at the whole person. Sometimes interpersonal intelligence, while it's probably the key to being a good leader, interpersonal intelligence leads to good communication. In some instances, we also need a skill that may not be represented or may be lost in the interview looking process by an incredibly charming person, a person who has powerful charisma. I worked at a university called Georgian Court University here in central New Jersey, and we had a very charismatic president. And the president has made what most people feel are a large amount of mistakes. And what would happen is, as these mistakes occurred, the president was always able to blame them, throw people under the bus. And so we lost good person after good person under the president. And eventually, after 7 years, the president was removed. But all the people that lost their jobs before that, in a lot of cases, shouldn't have lost their jobs. And I'm also, of course, I'm at Ocean County College. We have an articulation agreement with Kane, and we, in fact, have part of Kane University here in New Jersey. They're in Union. They have a campus nearby, and they have a campus actually on our campus. They, too, have a president who is highly charismatic, but they did very poorly in their middle states assertion, and were on the brink on their middle states accreditation, and they were on the brink of losing their accreditation. So charisma, we have to have it. We have to be able to have interpersonal intelligence. Obviously, a leader must be the best communicator possible, but we should not recruit leaders or look to leaders exclusively based on these two things. All right, assumption number 3, effective leadership is only possible when the leader is extremely cognizant of the culture that he or she is leading within, but is in fact an author of that culture. Because culture in an organization is going to create itself. It's going to be something that happens. At the university where I work, the president is highly involved in golf and sailing. The president likes golf and sailing. And so we see all around the university people who had no interest in golf or sailing before that suddenly becoming Tiger Woods and sailors of all sorts. And so leadership creates culture. People follow leaders. That's the whole part of it. And so the leader must always be cognizant of every action is modeling. Every action is something that other people will say, well, if the leader did that, then I can do that. As the dean of e-learning, if I don't respond to my students quickly in the classes that I'm teaching in, or if I don't respond to questions by other faculty members quickly, well, those are setting benchmarks. I may not intend them, but I'm setting a benchmark that in our culture, you don't have to get back to somebody quickly, or in our culture you can do this, or in our culture you can do that. And of course, there's always the danger of groupthink. As we've seen over and over again, everyone's saying diversity. Diversity is the key to success, and I strongly agree with that. But what happens to diversity once the diverse candidate is brought into the organization? Usually they're indoctrinated to be part of the organization, and therefore the diversity that we hired them for begins to be slowly winnowed away until there's not much left but another member of the groupthink. So it's something, culture and how to determine culture has to be purposeful for a leader. And doing that needs to be almost a plan. It seems a little frightening to think that the leader should sit down and create a plan to create a culture. But if we don't have a plan, something will eventually occur that we didn't plan on. So that's my 2 cents on that. Assumption number 4, I believe this is the last one, above all, be truthful. Leaders have to say the truth. They have to speak the truth, and they can't varnish it, because eventually the truth comes out and the leader is then undermined as someone who can be trusted. As I say here, truthfulness is this deep American ideal. It is part of being an American, but truth is nearly impossible for a leader to constantly give. As a dean, I very often am doing observations of faculty members who should be on a scale of 5 being the best, getting 2s. And on occasion, I'll find myself feeling bad for that person and wanting to pull them higher up and saying, I know you've been sick, or I know your kid's sick, or I know there's an issue here. And I think that if you're not truthful in an observation, or truthful constantly, even when the truth is difficult and you recognize that saying the truth at this moment will cause uncomfort will lead to a longer conversation than perhaps you want to have, will perhaps isolate someone, or if we're talking about speaking truth to another leader above us, well, that's the most frightening one of all. Speaking truth in the face of power, something I've heard said a few times, and how difficult that is to do. But again, if we're talking about a charismatic leader above us, and no one is saying to that charismatic leader, I don't believe you're correct, how is anything supposed to ever get better? So those are 4 assumptions that I try to work with. I think that they're valuable. I'm not sure about the charisma, how valuable it is, but these are assumptions that I do as part of my work every day. I've added some of those ideas in here, but maybe I'll give you one example of each of my 4 assumptions of how I do. Micromanagement. Very often a teacher or someone in one of the classes that I create or that I have overseen will want to know how to approach a test, how to approach a student, things of that nature. Where I work for an online learning division at a community college, and we use a master course system. In other words, we hire an author, a content expert, to create a course. Once that course is paid for and created and vetted by a group of experts, then we allow it to be given out to multiple teachers. I've written 8 of these courses, and very often, as I'm the dean, 2 or 3 instructors will write me and say, hey, I know you wrote this course, I know you're the dean, what's your opinion on handling this plagiarism case? Or what's your opinion about this student who didn't write a good thesis statement? And I try my best, as much as I can, to stop, take a deep breath, and say, well, that's your decision, you're the faculty member. And sometimes the easiest thing is to say, oh, the plagiarist should get an F. But it's not the best thing to say. So I work very hard not to micromanage. As in my career, I have been micromanaged, and I have been allowed to seek my own path of least resistance. So I know what it feels like. Charisma. I think I gave you a good array of that idea. I've seen a great deal of high leadership at a college level, college presidents whom possess a great deal of charisma, but in some cases, and certainly it's not the case where I work now, but in some cases, may not be prepared in other ways. And so I've seen this dismantle the leadership below the college president and really decimate the college's ability to function, because leadership below the charismatic and highest leader ends up being entirely without experience. So my point here is, and I look at it myself, when hiring, when on a search committee, when doing things, look at the array, look at the whole person. What are their experiences? Okay, perhaps they don't have the best ability to present their voice and to be charismatic and be funny and say a few things. But boy, if they have a lot of experience in what we need, they really should be considered. Culture. I work in a culture that's very interesting. Our president just had a buyout. They called it a separation incentive, but people who had worked at my college for more than 25 years were offered 70% of their salary to leave. And 4 of 6 vice presidents left, and they were all male. All 4 of the 6 vice presidents were actually white males over 65 years old, and they were replaced, not purposefully, but were replaced entirely by women. And so the culture, although it wasn't it wasn't something that was thought out, it just happened that the best candidates for these jobs were women. So 4 vice presidents, suddenly all women, and we all looked up and said suddenly, wow, what a different place we work in all of a sudden just by this idea. I haven't seen any difference in the day-to-day work, but I sure see a difference in the faces. And so it's going to be very interesting for me to see how the culture changes. And I know, as I said earlier, as the dean, my faculty follow me for culture. And as an English professor, I worked in the English department and the business department. I am finding that my science teachers will approach me in a way that they seem to be indicating to me they don't know how to communicate with me. And so I'm trying very hard to make sure that, because my deanship is not discipline-based, my deanship is every course. There's one dean for online. So I'm the dean of math, science, technology, social science, humanities, arts, everything. And so I'm working very hard to try to find a way to get a culture that embraces everybody. Truth. This one's one all the time. Students write me, or professors write me, and they're asking me for things that I know they will not be able to get, whether it's against college policy or what have you, and I have to say directly to them, no, that's probably not going to happen. At the moment, we have listed a brand new job at the university. We have college lecturers. Our college lecturers teach 7 courses and can do overloads, so they can teach as many as 9 courses. And we've been running with about 30 to 35 college lecturers in the last 3 years. That's how I started my career. And we're hiring our first college lecturer in e-learning. So this will be the very first person in our online division who's a full-timer with benefits. And the job posting has just exploded. There's over 250 applicants because this is a job which you can do from home, and people are searching for that. So there's a great deal of people who come up to me and say, will I get the job, will I not get the job? And of course, as a member of the search committee and the dean, I have to say I'm not allowed to speak about that. But it's a difficult thing to make sure that I'm constantly truthful with everyone who's looking for something from me. So I think that's my presentation. I hope you're doing very well, and I want to thank you again for allowing us to do it in this way. Again, I'm Jack Kelnhofer. There's my email. There's my phone number at work if you ever want to get in touch with me. And I'm really looking forward to this class. I hope you do well. Have a great day, Dr. Gould.